Welcome to the Triple S podcast. Today is the biggest day in maybe all of sports, but definitely in the NFL. Today is the Super Bowl. The Kansas City Chiefs are going to be facing off against the San Francisco 49ers. I'm going to be making my prediction today. I'm also going to be breaking down some keys for both teams and, discussing their seasons as a whole. I'm going to start with the defending champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Their favorites going into the season, and they struggled at times in this season. I'd say that this is the worst team that Patrick Mahomes has ever been on, especially just with the talent around him. Obviously, no Tyreek Hill this season. Had to rely a lot on Travis Kelce. Some of the receivers, not living up to expectations. Kadarius Toney not even gonna play in this Super Bowl. Because he's so bad. And he was one of the Patrick Mahomes' leading targets this year. So, Patrick Mahomes didn't have a lot of help. The defense, while I think it was better than years past, it still isn't great. And so I think this season really just proves how great Patrick Mahomes is. He has 4,000 yards on the season. Maybe the interceptions a little higher than you wanted to, 14 interceptions this season. But all in all, he's just put this team on his back, especially late in the season and in these playoffs. They've had to beat the number one seed Ravens, the Bills, who are always great, and the Dolphins all in these playoffs. And that's a really tough road to go down. And so I think that for this game, the key is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, this is not to discount the talent of the team around him. This is a team that is going to be the favorites in this Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, in a game of this magnitude, it's going to come down to the big plays that Patrick Mahomes can make. And even more than the big plays, I think, it's going to be the good decisions. As I said, the interceptions, 14 interceptions is still great, but it's not at the level that he wants it to be. And if he throws more than one interception in this game, which is very possible with this San Francisco defense, I'd say that they would lose the game if you just told me that Patrick Mahomes was going to throw two interceptions or more. I'd say that they would lose this game. Obviously, a lot can play out tonight. We don't know all the possibilities. But it's going to be Patrick Mahomes making sound decisions. Not trying to play hero ball, even though he really is the hero for this team. And is going to require them to outsmart this San Francisco defense. And this San Francisco defense, it is all time good. They've forced 22 interceptions this season, only giving up 5,000 total yards, which is third in the league. And this is all obviously complemented with their great offense, who is third in the league in yards, who, Brock Purdy, as much as he gets called a game manager, is actually a really good quarterback and should have probably been second place in MVP voting this year, behind obviously Lamar Jackson. But that's a different discussion. So when you complement those two things, that if San Francisco stops you, and it's very likely that they will, either through a turnover, just making you punt, they're really good at 3-and-outs, that San Francisco offense can score in a hurry. And if you get behind two scores, it's obviously still the Kansas City Chiefs, but then it becomes a really difficult game because that defense can just ice you out. And, the offense just goes to work with their running game. They use Deebo Samuel a little bit more later in those games too. And, this is what this is what San Francisco's been doing really all year. And we saw them have to come back against the Lions. And that wasn't really, a miraculous effort by any one player. It was really good, sound team offense and team defense, especially in the way that they shut down the Lions in the second half, only allowing them, score one touchdown in the fourth quarter. And at the end of the day, this defense, it just has the talent and it has the names to make big plays when it matters most, as we saw in those two fourth downs in the second half. In that Lions game, any team that has Nick Bosa, Javon Hargrave, names of that counter the names of Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes and Rashee Rice, who are obviously going to, I think they're all going to pop off in this game. But the names on defense, are they better than the names on offense? And I think that's what it's going to come down to. And so that's, another key for San Francisco is, do those big names pop out and play at the level that we know they can? How many sacks does Nick Bosa get? And even more than sacks, how many pressures does Nick Bosa get? How many times does Patrick Mahomes have to make one of those, Mahomey type plays out of the pocket, fading away across the body, across the field? And obviously he's capable of making those throws, but the more situations that you put him in that he has to do that, the more chances you have to come up with an interception or a big sack or, a miscue by Kansas City. And if Nick Bosa from that edge spot can continue to put pressure on Patrick Mahomes the whole game, that's another key advantage for San Francisco. And on the Kansas City defense side, I think that Chris Jones from that D-line spot has to do the same thing too to Brock Purdy, because, we saw Brock Purdy use his legs a little bit in that Detroit game in the NFC Championship. But other than that game, he really has been a very stationary quarterback, not these type of modern dual threat quarterbacks. And so if you can get pressure on him, you can make him collapse in the pocket. That's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because pushing San Francisco behind in the chains, they don't have that type of, Brock Purdy probably isn't going to make a 50-yard throw very regularly, and I think that he's very talented. But in a lot of ways, he is a game manager. I don't like that term, but he is a game manager in the sense that he isn't going to wow you with spectacular plays the way that Mahomes does. But he is going to be very safe with the football. He's going to make the throws that he needs to make underneath, and that's might be enough for San Francisco to win, because it's just the talent that they have with CMC, with Deebo Samuel. And they can just pound the ball away, running it, and with, those quick throws, they don't need Brock Purdy to make those, heaves. But they might if Chris Jones and obviously the rest of that Kansas City defense, players like Nick Bolton and Willie Gay, if those guys from their linebacker spots can put pressure on Brock Purdy, is going to force them to run it more, and then they become more predictable, and then you can focus on loading the box to stop the run. And that leads me to my last point I want to make about the San Francisco 49ers before we move on, is that they're just going to have to run it well, and that's an obvious point, because that's a lot of what their offense is predicated on. But Christian McCaffrey is going to have an all-star level performance. He might have to win Super Bowl MVP if San Francisco wants to win convincingly. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey on just 37 carries this postseason has 188 yards, 4 touchdowns. And I think that this is a number to watch. A specific number is a 100-yard game for Christian McCaffrey. Can he have an 100-yard game? And then on top of that 100-yard game, can Deebo Samuel do some things with his legs? And, I'm not going to say obviously 100 yards, but if he gets 20, 25 yards on those quick pitches, those end arounds, I think that is enough to guarantee the game for the San Francisco 49ers. But it's obviously all important to watch for, and there's going to be unknowns going into this game, and there's going to be some crazy things that happen in this game, because there's always crazy things that happen in the Super Bowl, and there's always crazy things that happen with these two teams. Last time we saw them was in that 2019 season, right? Obviously, San Francisco had Jimmy G at that point, but a lot of the players on that team are still on the San Francisco 49ers team, and they're going to be wanting to get revenge. I think it's going to be a very interesting game all around. And, my final prediction, I think that Patrick Mahomes is just going to be too good. And I think that the best players on the Kansas City Chiefs offense are going to be better than the best players on the San Francisco 49ers defense. I think it's going to be a very close game. It's probably going to be in the 30s. I'm going to say it's going to be um, Kansas City 37, San Francisco 34. It's probably going to come down right to the wire, but I think that the offense of Kansas City is going to prevail here, and I think that that's going to be what to watch for. And I say my prediction for Super Bowl MVP is going to be Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, I think he's going to have over 300 yards. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 400 yards. It's going to be a crazy game for him, I think. And if it isn't, and if I'm wrong, then it's obviously going to be on that San Francisco 49ers defense. I'm not rooting for anybody in that game. I don't really like either team. But my prediction is that Kansas City is going to win this game. And that's all we're going to see tonight. And I'll be sure to talk about it later when the result does happen. I'm going to talk about the game. And then I'm going to also talk about the NFL draft, as that's coming up really quick. And obviously around the league, there's going to be NBA playoffs, that stretch of the NBA playoffs coming up soon. It's all going to be very exciting to watch for. But that's all for now.